Hey, welcome back to Gold Scratch. So, I mentioned before, things don't always go well. You've heard me say experience is expensive. Well, this is going to be one of the examples. Today was supposed to be, and Alex just got here. He thought he was coming. We were going to start the engine up and let you listen to how nice it sounds, because it looks like it's all ready to go, but it's not. We ran into a problem, and we got to fix it. And I'm going to go through the process of how we determine what the problem was, how to fix it. And whenever you run into something like this, it's been a couple of frustrating days for a bunch of reasons. But you got to remember that eventually it's going to get solved. And once it does, you're going to be smarter, you're going to know more. You learn more from your bad experiences, problems like this, than when things go well. I've started up probably about 50 engines on this test stand most of the time. You set the timing, you make sure you got fuel in the carburetor, you got water in the rad. I go through my checklist, and you turn the key and it fires up and it sounds great, and you break it in and shut it off and, relax and enjoy it. Well, this case, it didn't happen that way. I did get it started yesterday, and it did not run good. And so I shut it off. It only ran about 10 seconds, and I shut it off. And I'll just bring that point in. It's a brand new camshaft. We are breaking in a cam. And I go back a long way on this one. A lot of people believe once you start it, you can't shut it down. You got to run it for 20 minutes. That's not true. If something's wrong, shut it down, fix it. The point is, when it is running, you have to keep it, between 2,000 and 2,500 RPM. Why do you do that? Just to make sure there's enough oil splashing around, taking the heat away from that camshaft, helping to get a good break-in. That's really the only reason that you do that. So, but if something's wrong, don't run it if it isn't running good. And it didn't run good. So the symptoms were, it started up instantly, and it accelerated, but it sounded like there was a little bit of popping sound coming out of the exhaust once in a while. Motor had a shake in it. Obviously the cylinders weren't all pulling equally. It's a brand new engine. The heads have been totally reconditioned. There's brand new pistons. What the heck can it be? So I'm going to take you through the process that we use to figure that out. And if you're a MOPAR guy, you may already have the answer. But if you don't, stick with me and I'll show you how we determine that. But I'll bring you back to starting on, I guess Mike brought me the parts here last weekend, and dyno day is supposed to be on Saturday, 2 days from now. We're not going to make the dyno. We're not going to make this dyno. We are going to get it on the dyno, but it won't be this week. I had to cancel Daryl on the dyno. Usually I have it at Daryl's Wednesday, Thursday night at the latest, and when we get there Saturday morning, we're ready to start it up and make some power. But in this case, we had to cancel the dyno because the engine's not ready, and it's not going to be ready. We need a solution to it. So we're going to bring you through the process. But starting off, first of all, I'll go through this. I've got a number of points. First of all, the test stand's made for a small block Chevy. So this is not one. It's a Dodge. There are a lot of differences between Dodges and Chevys, and one of them is on the Dodge, the starter has to mount to the bell housing, not to the engine. So I had to have the bell housing on for that reason. If you watch most of my videos, usually there's a platform back here and a framework that holds the back of the engine up, and I couldn't use that. So I had to mount the starter onto the bell housing, so I had to use the bell housing. That had to go. I used my turnbuckles that are from the old Circle Track days. When you set up a Circle Track car, you take the shocks off, install them at your ride height, and that's how you start the setup. So I have them left over, and I managed to get the headers to fit in and get it all on here, and it's on here pretty nice right now. All the hoses line up and fit, and that's all mounted okay. And the next thing was mounting the starter. Once again, I had a problem getting the starter initially. I got that fixed, and when I turn my switch on, and I have a disconnect switch on my electrical system, went directly to ground. The wire started to heat up. What the heck's going on? That's a brand new starter, that was on it. I had to go to Daryl's and borrow his starter. Still don't really know. When I bench test his starter, with just putting 12 volts to it and grounding it, it runs fine. When I bolt it to the engine, as soon as you give it power, it goes to ground. I don't know. So I took it back off, put Daryl's starter on, no problem, works just fine. I had a little bit of a scare because for a while my gauges didn't work, and my panel, which is the fuel pump, the fan, and the lights, and ignition, of course, none of that worked. Anyway, that's all working okay now. So we got past that stage. So I got it running for a few seconds, shut it off. Then I noticed, here's one thing, I'm going to bring this up because I've seen this happen before. I had a customer take an engine that I built for him away, and when he installed the carburetor, he made this mistake. If you want to come in, if you can come in here, Alec, there's a port at the back of the starter. That's really made for your power brakes, usually. That's a fairly big size port, and that port was uncovered. This plug was not on there, the plug that's there. And that will suck a lot of vacuum in. Now, when I first saw that, I said, I got it. I'll plug that port and it's going to run fine. Well, that didn't fix the problem. That is a problem, but that wasn't the only problem. So I fixed that. So the next thing is to point out the differences between a Ford or a Chev and a Dodge. The bottom end is very, very similar, but the valve train is different. The way it's oiled is different, and the way the valves adjusted are different. So there's a clue going forward. So, and that is a big difference. So I already described how it's running. So I'm going to go through the steps that I use to solve a problem. And you have to remember before you start, it's going to get solved. And you're going to be smarter when it gets solved. You might have to go through some stuff to get there, but I'm going to try to help you go through that. I just gathered this, put this together quickly. I'm going to use my cheat sheet. Alex holding the camera for me now, filming it. He doesn't even know what I'm going to say. He came over here thinking we're going to run this engine today. So first you've got to gather information. What are the symptoms, and take diagnostics. I already described the sound. So I know the pistons are brand new, the rings are brand new, all that stuff I know is fine. It had oil pressure. It only ran about 10 seconds, but I did have oil pressure. That wasn't a problem. So first thing I did was, knowing that, I checked compression on 2 cylinders, one on each side, and I had actually almost 0 compression on one side and 150 pounds on the other side. So somewhere the compression is leaking out. Probably not past the rings. I know they're new, so that's a good place to start. So the next thing you do, go through, after you got that information, process of elimination. Eliminate things that you can say, I know it's not that. So I know it's not. I checked the timing again. I set the distributor, like I say, it started perfectly. Check the firing order of the spark plug wires. I know that's good. Check the spark plugs. The spark plugs are all firing. I know it's a brand new brawler carburetor. Carburetor is almost very, very seldom the carburetor is the problem. Usually ignition is the problem, but it's not. I know now there's no vacuum leaks. The pistons and rings are new. The wires are brand new, all that stuff. So it's probably nothing like that. And it seemed like every cylinder was kind of trying to fire. So that's the process of elimination. Get rid of the things, list the things that it could be, and say, okay, could it be that? If it's not, then you can stroke that off and move on to cause and effect analysis. So start with cause and effect. So what's the effect? Rough running. So what's the possible cause of that? Poor compression. I did hear a little bit of popping through the exhaust, like a backfire through the exhaust, like as if the ignition was backfiring through the exhaust. Once again, I know the timing's good. I double checked the timing. And so it leads me to think valves are not closing. Some valves are not closing. And how could that be? I probably should have known better at this point. So here's the evidence. On the Dodge, Ali can come in here now. I'll show you. I take this valve cover off, and if you're a Dodge guy, you already know all this. The rocker arms are mounted on a shaft, and the shaft is in a fixed location. And so here's some other information in the evidence. We decked the block and the heads. The total between the block and the heads about 30 thousandths of an inch. And so now the heads are 30 thousandths of an inch closer to the camshaft than they were before. And for that reason, based on cause and effect analysis, we likely valves are not closing, so that the valves are not closing because the shaft is now closer to the camshaft than it was. So the preload on the lifter, if this was a small block Chev, you have individual adjustment on each rocker arm and you just adjust it to compensate for that. Well, you have a fixed shaft, you can't do that. So because of that, taking into consideration the block and the heads have been machined. So right now, I haven't solved this problem yet, but right now, my assumption is that I need to get that rocker arm shaft farther away from the camshaft than it is now. Now, I think I mentioned in a previous video, Mike's also bought for Blakely a nice roller rocker assembly with 1.6 rockers. We're not using it to start up because it's 1.6. 1.6 is harder on your camshaft, harder, your valve spring pressures are going to be higher, all that stuff. So for startup, we're using the 1.5s, and I also have very light valve springs in this engine to make it easy on the camshafts. I think that's one of the real issues. If I just ran across another nice Corvette engine by somebody that I know, lost the camshaft recently. Startup valve springs should be softer on a camshaft like that that's vulnerable. So I'll be taking this rocker shaft off anyway, and I'll be changing the valve springs, and then we'll put the 1.6 roller rockers on after. So next thing, what you do, you got all this information, you've used the process of elimination, done the cause and effect analysis. What is the effect? And you take the effect and work back to the possible causes, eliminating ones that aren't correct. And then the next thing you do, some research. So I think, okay, somebody else has probably had this problem. And where do you go and research? Well, YouTube is a good place to start. A manual, if you have one. Forums, there's lots of forums. And if you run into a problem, no matter what you run into, somebody knows the solution. Somebody else has probably run across that and solved it, and they can help you solve it. So remember that. So you got to think then of the application. And so the solution is, based on all the things that I mentioned, and I didn't know this before I started, you can buy shims. So I'm going to get you to come in again, Alex. This shaft is going to come right off. There's 5 bolts, and these hold downs, they basically bolt the shaft right to the head. So you can buy shims, and I'm going to put this in the video. I think that's a picture of them, really. Mancini Racing, which is in Michigan. And for those that don't realize, we're an hour from Port Huron and 2 hours from Detroit here. So Mancini's somewhere around there. And they sell shim packages that either 10 thou, 15 thou, or 30 thousandths. So we'll take that shaft off, put the shims under here, and it'll take some trial and error to determine what is the right amount. And here's one of the kind of negative things. Shaft rockers have a lot of advantages compared to individual. Obviously, you got the strength of the whole shaft. Only a couple of valves are moving at a time, so that makes it stiffer. But if you've had a valve job and the valves are sunk into the heads at different amounts, then you really need individual settings. But you haven't got that choice, and in a lot of engines, you don't have that choice either. The new rocker arm setup that we're going to use will have adjustable rocker arms. These are not adjustable. So we're stuck with that. So we're going to get those shims ordered. Mike's working on that already. He's going to get those shims for me. And we will have a follow-up. I'll install them. I'll find the right length of shim in order to give us the right preload on the valve lifters. and I'm pretty sure that's going to solve the problem. It's not solved yet. We haven't got that. So the Mancini Racing. So then I'm going to hold the solution until we actually empirical testing. That's my theory. It's only a theory until we do change the shims and we start it up and the engine runs right. That's empirical testing. That's reality. Otherwise, you're just guessing. It's just a theory. But we are going to do that. And then once we get that going, lessons learned, right? Next time I build a MOPAR, hopefully after this somebody else will have me build one. We will check that out when we install it in the first place. And retrospectively, I knew we decked ahead. I should have thought of that. Yes, somebody's going to nail me, and yeah, I'm fessing up. I should have thought of that, and I didn't. And when I did bolt the rocker arm shaft down, I did tried to feel the push rods, and I could turn the push rods, but sometimes you can't, even though they are. And I'm suspecting what's happening is, if the maximum shim's only 30 thou, that's probably all they intend you to use. So the valve is probably not closing, and pretty light valve springs combined with that, the valve's probably not quite closing, and as a result of that, we got compression leaking out of probably more than one cylinder. The first one I checked was almost zero compression, and that certainly would account for it running rough. So then document what you learn, lessons learned, and and move on. So hope you found that helpful. If you got a problem, sooner or later it's going to get solved, and you're going to be smarter when it's all over. It's frustrating going through it because I come out here on Monday thinking I'm going to get this thing mounted and get it running on Monday. Elliot's going to come make a video on Tuesday, and they're going to take it to the dyno on Wednesday, and I don't have to look at it again until Saturday. Well, it's still here, and it's going to be here until Mike gets those shims and we do our empirical testing. So, well, a couple other things too. Usually I use an HEI distributor, one wire distributor, which I'm set up for. I had to make a little mounting bracket for the MSD because Mike's using an MSD and the coils and all that stuff. Anyway, that's just all detail, but it takes time, and that's what we had to go through. So hope you found that helpful. On the 454, still here. I haven't forgot about it. We're waiting on some parts, mainly the camshaft. And we are taking a head to build a little tomorrow. Bill's going to flow one of these heads. These are the ones, the 990s with the great big square ports. Everybody thinks they flow really great. Well, we're going to find out. We're going to go to Bill's and have him put them on the flow bench and see how well they perform. I've had a complete valve job done by Mark at Atchison Racing, and so they should be ready to go. So hope you found that helpful. Please remember to like and subscribe, and check back with us in a week or so, and we'll hopefully have the shims on and have this solved, and be booking a new date for back to Daryl's dyno to dyno it. Thanks for watching Gold's Garage.